following tape is for informational purposes only. Do not distribute without express permission. Harvestry Limited reserves that right. Chapter 15, Roles and Titles. Introduction. In a studio art discipline, you will likely encounter concept artists, illustrators, environment artists, 3D generalists, character artists, world builders, UI UX artists, FX artists, tech artists, lighting artists, animators, and more. Depending on where you go, roles and titles will mean separate things, or the same thing. Such is the nature of teams and companies functioning in unique ways. Don't expect definitions to cover all companies, and some companies may not function this way at all. The role is usually the job itself, what you are called based off your responsibilities. In this case, a role would be concept artist or character artist. The title being the level of that role. This covers seniority as if they are management. Thus, senior or principal are titles. This gets complex at some places, considering manager or lead to be roles and not titles. This is normal, though sometimes this is so management don't have to promote into those roles and can get people to take on added responsibilities for the same pay rate. Boy, we really fucked that up, didn't we? We're doing it live, baby. Prescribed roles. Some roles you will end up familiar with in many studio pipelines are as follows. Intern. An intern is a short-term position which commonly is paid, but can be unpaid, meant to be a learning experience for the individual. I told you some of this stuff is surface level. This is definitely for people who aren't really familiar with what roles generally mean. It is often filled by someone at college level or someone directly out of college. Many universities have relationships with studios to provide internships. Internships might be only for a summer or can last for over a year. The goal of an internship is twofold. First, to help the intern gain on-the-job experience. Second, so studios may use it as a testing ground for potential full-time employees. Having an intern is often used to train employees into adopting a mentoring and management relationship with the intern as preparation for leadership themselves. Having an intern is often used to train employees into adopting a mentoring and Some roles you will end up familiar with in many studio pipelines are as follows. Art director. The vision holder for a project tends to manage cross-discipline, 2D, 3D, outsource, etc. Cross-discipline just means, they're not just managing their own specific discipline of 2D or 3D or whatever. So it just means they're kind of going into those other areas like we've talked about before. A high-level manager, they will work with a creative director and or design director, as well as any other directors in the creation of the project. Their job is to direct the visuals of the project and oversee the artist to keep a cohesive look and feel for the project. Major approvals go through the AD and their delegated leadership. The assumption is the AD will be doing the most art and the best art, but that is not always the case, especially at large studios. Usually the art director will spend more time doing approvals, being in meetings, providing feedback, and functioning as a high-level producer. This is something that people mistake a lot, especially, because quite frankly, a lot of people in these director positions will kind of frame themselves as like, oh, I'm incredibly creative and I do the best art. And, being a director, people who do a lot of like teaching in art sometimes try to fashion themselves as like, yeah, as a director, I've won at art. Not everybody does it, but when they do, they harm the actual understanding of what an art director's role is, which really is a high level producer. They're touching on things, making decisions, organizing schedules, making assignments, and overseeing things. It's a very high level team management job, as well as a discipline management job. It helps if they have an artistic prowess, but they will likely be employing it less than the team's artists and be managing them instead. Some studios don't have an art director and rely on leads for that role instead of having one creative director. Lead artist. A leader of their respective discipline who works under and in collaboration with the AD, sometimes called a head or department head. A lead does not need to be the most experienced or capable individual on a team, but they tend to be a senior or higher. At some companies, a lead is the highest on the title structure. At others, it is merely a role kept separate from the title. A management role. The lead will represent and direct their team of artists. This is a less art-heavy role focusing more on meetings and feedback, as with the AD role. Art manager. We talked about this one previously, and so we can get into it here. The art manager is like a coach for the art team. They work to assist and create communication between artists and discipline departments. Not every studio has an art manager, and they are needed less at smaller studios. Recently, Blizzard got rid of their art manager position completely, which is unfortunate because they usually work with leads and whatnot to kind of manage the careers of individuals, and it's really helpful to have one. It sounds like they're managing the art itself, but really they're managing the artists. You kind of want a good one, but a bad one can hurt you a lot too. They will work with producers to keep things running smoothly and will be a touch point for career path conversations and assistance. Art managers do not need to be an artist, and often they are not, though they will be familiar with art pipelines and expectations of the team. If there is conflict with coworkers or issues with outlined projects that doesn't require human resources intervention, you will likely be speaking on this with the art manager as much as you will with your discipline lead. That's a big one. They kind of tag team with HR if you have a problem with another person on the team or you feel you're not being given the resources to perform. A lot of times they'll have hands in any of your reviews as a worker, etc., so on. Producer. A business-oriented role that helps manage teams and keeps development of a project on track. The main goal of a producer in games is to ensure the project sticks to schedule and devs are able to work smoothly. As organizers on the team, producers handle priority and impact of tasks. These are the people who will be bugging you for Jira tickets and time estimates. If you don't know what Jira is, it's just like task assignment software. People kind of, who know, they know. It's a butt of jokes a lot of the time. Producers will usually be handling contracts, curbing costs with finance teams, assisting marketing teams, and assisting with interdiscipline communication. Outsource manager. Talked about this one recently. If a company has contracts with third-party vendors or external partners, then they might have an outsource manager specifically for that area of work. They are usually, but not always, an artist and will be the one assigning the work, providing feedback, and communicating with the contracted artists. They're not always an artist, though. It's much easier when they are, because they can convey feedback and understand the pipelines better. I've worked with outsourcing managers who weren't artists, and it's been to varying degrees of success. Outsource managers will also be handling sourcing and onboarding of external partners, as well as invoicing. This makes outsource managers and their teams the point of contact for cross-communication with external partners in terms of feedback and project pivots. Diagnosed titles. Titles themselves and the order of titles can differ between studios. Team size is a major contributor to determining what roles there will be and how they are structured. As titles change places and meanings within different companies, it can be confusing. So please, just consider this a quick general guide to it and not set in stone. Some teams also rely less on titles because they wish to work within a flat structure. Flat structure is a team where most workers are intended to have equal ranking and few to no directors. Flat structure also is a huge problem if devs on the team are not experienced, because you basically have to collectively decide how things will go, because there isn't an individual in a director or lead seat who can simply be the one who breaks any ties in decision making or simply is the one who makes the final decision. So sometimes it means that you can flow within a team reasonably well, and different people can understand where their areas of expertise are, and other times it becomes an unmitigated disaster. The intention of a flat structure is that the decision-making can be performed faster or on the fly, and workers can move up and down through the company as needed. Many studios treat their rankings of titles very differently and require different amounts of experience or time to promote to or assign someone a title. Due to this, you will sometimes find extremely experienced and skilled workers who are only mid, or workers who do not seem to know what they are doing at a principal level. As with any promotion, anywhere, it really depends on the lead's discretion and what the company allows. This is just a nice, kind way to say that sometimes your lead will make a really good or a really bad decision on a promotion, and the title doesn't speak to the experience of the individual. I know a lot of people who are principals, high seniors, or art directors that are awful and really inexperienced, but somebody loved them. And I know some incredibly talented people who are still at mid and not even senior. It's just, sometimes the companies won't promote, sometimes people just, whatever. Some titles you will end up familiar with in many studio pipelines are as follows. Junior or Associate. This is the entry-level title for a newer or less experienced dev. This role is expected to be a learning-on-the-job role and averages around 3 years prior to promoting to mid-level. That's just an average. Don't take that as a guarantee. Don't take that you're always going to be 3 years at that junior level. Sometimes you'll be under a year. It really just depends on the place, but this is an average. The point of saying it this way is to lead to the expectation that if this is your first job ever, don't necessarily think you're going to be senior within a year. You could, but don't think that that's what's going to happen. Usually overseen by a more experienced senior of the team who is assigned as a mentor. Some places separate junior and associate, with associate being another name for intern. Juniors typically have less than 2 years of work experience as a professional and are expected to work in simpler tasks to learn the rope. Middle, also just known as regular dev, or in most cases just your job title, like concept artists. This is where juniors move to once they gain enough experience to be trusted with more responsibility. A mid is likely to have more ownership and understanding of the work that they do. They will typically be able to contribute more, but also are more likely to experience crunch. The more experience you have, generally, the more likely you're to be assigned more or have more expected of you, which also means the more likely you are to be taken advantage of. Senior. Senior devs are considered more of an authority and able to leverage experience. Once someone is a senior, it is expected they would be able to lead a team if need be. Think more responsibility and more pay. Seniors are expected to carry a level of expertise in their specific discipline and to be capable of teaching others. That degraded. Like, the slides are degrading a little bit on purpose, but that's just a fuck up on my end. They're expected to carry a level of expertise in their specific discipline and teach others as well. That's what I'm trying to say. Words are hard, man. Many large studios create tiers for senior, ranging to senior 2 or even senior 3. Principal. This is what I am right now. A high seniority position that denotes years of experience within their discipline, but also a high level of skill. Principal is usually granted to individuals to recognize their capability and reliability beyond senior stature. That wasn't a weird flex or anything. I'm just saying that specifically, I'm a principal. When I was at Blizzard, I was a senior 2. Previous job, I was a senior. Then before that, I was a mid. When I was hired into AAA way back in 2009, I was brought in not as a junior, just as a mid. So I was just brought in as a concept artist. I skipped junior completely because I had done so much freelance. They just kind of felt it applied to the job. But I wasn't a senior because they were like, you haven't worked specifically in game dev. So that was kind of the point. It is also used as a title for folks who wish to progress but not enter management roles. Folks in management can still be principal, however. They are expected to be really, really good at their job. Some studios have tiers of principal, up to principal 3, and sometimes call this title staff or distinguished. Lead or management. If lead is considered a title at a company and not just a role, then it goes here. It is considered higher seniority to a principal and is most often a leadership position as described above. This happens less often, but yeah, it does happen. People will just be like, lead is actually a tier of seniority. Sometimes lead is considered the same tier as principal. For Blizzard, as an example, a lead is not a title like senior or principal and does not go here. Get used to these differences from studio to studio. Yeah, I was specifically reminded that it is it is not a title, it's a role. That was the way so that they could get people to work in lead roles and not pay them more. You're just like, oh, well, you're just shifting into a management position, but you don't get paid for that. Other possibly made up titles. Some places add more roles or interchange them for principal, such as expert or the aforementioned staff. Oftentimes, when there is someone who is ground level at a studio and is incredibly senior, they will make up titles for them within the company. This is how principal was originally introduced at Blizzard, and how you end up with odd titles for the most senior members of large studios. Like, you'll get weird ones too, depending on the culture of the studio, where they'll be like master crafter or whatever the hell. But originally at Blizzard, they gave principal to like original people who were there. They created the role for them, and then as they started giving that role to other people, as it is told, then they made higher rankings of principal for those people, and then created new roles for higher than that. It sends a weird message sometimes if the company's main structure is normal, and then you just kind of start making up stuff because you can't really tell what that, if you're like, junior, mid, senior, senior two, principal, high, officer of the artistic lordship or something. You know what I mean? Most people aren't doing that, but staff and experts does show up a lot. Roles tend to be separate from titles and can mix and match. For example, you can have a senior become a senior lead and someone go from mid to associate art director. This happened at Blizzard when they had a principal artist who's incredibly skilled, and they moved him into an art director role. They made him an associate art director, the idea being like he's a newbie in the art director specific area, which was weird. But the idea was supposed to be like, well, you're early into art direction. It was to send a message, and in that case, it was also to just pay them less. Someone who is senior in concept but inexperienced in UI may have a lower title if they change disciplines to better reflect their experience in that area. So yeah, you're like, oh, I've done concept, I've done illustration, but you're not really doing UI design, but you want to switch. They switch you over. You were a senior concept artist. Now you're just a mid or a junior UI UX because they're like, you're actually learning again. The void calls for your questions. What questions, if any, do you have for this section? Were there any? Are there any? Are we moving on? Do you have a preference for management producer roles versus art heavy roles? Which one tends to lead the most burnout? Personal preference? So originally I got into management because quite frankly, so this is going to be very personal experienced. I got into management because I had bad managers like 3 times in a row, and I had an opportunity to get into leadership or risk having another bad manager who was kind of abusive to the team. So I took on the responsibility. And by way of that, when I relinquished it, another person took on that responsibility. And then I ended up in that responsibility later because that was the experience. So for me, the ability to direct things and manage it is good because at least I can kind of go, okay, I can affect this more than if I'm just being told what to do. But my preference is actually to have a really good manager and then just put my hood up and do my job. You know what I mean? Because when you're in management roles and including producer roles, a lot of responsibility falls on you in terms of other team members, right? It's not make a cool design and have it get through feedback loops. It's can you help this other person perform? Can you take care of these tasks? Can you do scheduling and all that kind of stuff, especially if you're a producer? But also for me right now, art heavy roles burn me out for doing art outside of work. So right now I work in a leadership role because it actually has me on hands-on with art less, which lets me have more energy to do art on my own outside of work, which I really, really like. So now I kind of lean into it. The other thing is that when you work in management, that is the best way to unlock higher tiered pay rates. Um, and that's why a lot of bad people stay in management sometimes. It's both because they like to be in control of other people sometimes, but it's also because that's when you start making more money, because you'll hit a salary cap a lot of the times unless you go into management. Unless you're like a rock star and you can really kind of justify extreme pay rates. So once you go into management, you just make a lot more money. I make a lot more money because I'm in management, quite frankly. And they're paying for my experience, they're paying for my skill, and the ability that I have that if I can't get someone else to do it, I can just do it myself, either as good or better. But not all managers are like that, so mileage varies. I think you can get burnt out in any of these roles if you're looking to do art, being art heavy roles, and you want to do art outside. Then non-management can burn you out, but really it doesn't mean you should go into management. It means you should find a better fit of a job that doesn't work you as hard, right? Because management roles and even high senior mentoring roles, a lot of people want those either for the pay or the prestige, but you have more responsibilities, and the higher you are on that totem pole, the more likely you are to affect other people on the team and their careers, and you don't want to harm other people, you know what I mean, in their careers. So you're gonna be the higher you are in management, the higher you are in that totem pole, the more you're going to affect other people. So you gotta be careful about that. So for me, that's my answer. For a lot of people I know, they just want to avoid management because it's hard. But then you get a lot of people who move into management who shouldn't be managers, and then you're back to the bad manager thing, which we have a short chapter on later. Any other questions? Sorry, I'm scrolling. I think we're good. I actually have to. All right, I have to use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. Then we'll go to the next chapter. I'm like dying here. Hold on, I'll be right back. Hi, I'm back. Oh, we did lose people this time. We're losing them. Everybody's leaving. Goodbye. Yeah, I washed my hands. Man, are you kidding me? So that's what happens when you're talking a lot and you need a lot of tea because you're talking a lot, and then you have to go to the bathroom too often whilst giving a talk. So hopefully you're having a good time and you're ready to move on to the next area, because that's what we're doing. Oh, wait, what? Oh, we got another question. Sorry. Would it be badly seen to ask for a course for a managerial role if you never worked on it? No, that's actually good. That actually hits on something I didn't talk about, which was places like Blizzard and whatnot actually have courses for manager roles. I will say, I actually checked out the one at Blizzard on recommendation to get acquainted with it, especially because we were going to put somebody else in a manager role, and I was assisting with that, and I wanted to know what kind of coursework they were going to deal with. But unfortunately, it was from like a third-party company, so a company outside of Blizzard, and they were kind of really bad at it. Like they made weird suggestions like, oh, if someone's bad at a role and a really bad manager, instead of going, well, take them out of that role and train them up, they're like, oh, just give them a ton more support and ensure that they stay in that role and keep, giving them more resources and taking them away from other people, basically, was the implication. And I was like, I don't think that's really a good way to do that. So that information was suspect. But some places actually do have management training material, classes, courses, mentorships, etc., so on. I was actually working directly with somebody myself to train them up into management and be like, hey, let's really go over this and see if this is what you want. This is what it would look like. These are the skills we can cultivate, stuff like that. I think it's excellent to ask for a course if you're going to go into management and know what those expectations are. Because to be quite frank, there's a lot of terrible managers in game dev, a lot of really bad ones, because just like any other place, people love being in charge and being able to go, I'm the boss, I'm automatically cool, right? I'm rad, I'm important. And a lot of times the people who make the best bosses are the ones who don't want to do it, because you need a lot of empathy, understanding, and commitment, and people who want to see others succeed, which is, some people can't understand that. Why would you want other people to succeed? That would make me look worse. No, like, everybody's supposed to have a better time. That's part of what management is. It's not bossing people around. It's committing to creating success from the efforts of everybody involved. And again, going back to soft skills section, that's difficult to do. But yeah, absolutely. If they have it, take it. Even if it's a bad course, usually you'll get a feel for that because people within the course will say so. When I was in the management course checking that out, a lot of people in there had the same concerns I did, and we were like, that sounds awful. Maybe let's not do that, and you can kind of get a good litmus for how that goes. Next,